So forgive me as I sit in this tram to do this update for Scandinavia and Finland, but it's damn cold outside, minus 15, which I guess is what's to be expected in these parts. It's so cold that the sea has frozen over in the harbour here, and you've got these crazy people jumping into the icy water and then also getting into a warm sauna, so I guess that kind of counteracts the cold, right? So Finland and Scandinavia, the reason why I guess Finland's called out separately is I didn't realise this, it's not part of Scandinavia, so Denmark, which is connected to Germany but not Sweden, is, and Finland, which is connected to Sweden, isn't, so go figure. Anyway, so Scandinavia, you can not throw a rock without hitting an EV. It really lives up to the reputation. They are everywhere, to the point where we were coming into Oslo on the freeway, and I counted 17 EVs that passed us in some traffic. I think there was only like 2 or 3 non-EVs in the line. It was just crazy. But yeah, everywhere you look, there's some towns in Norway now where over 50% of the cars on the road are EVs. So it's just crazy. And all sorts of brands, obviously the sort of traditional ones, plenty of Tesla and the European brands, but you also see the newer Chinese companies making their presence known, especially in the showrooms. I think the legacy brands have kind of retreated to the suburbs and to their service centres for sales, but the Chinese ones are making a name for themselves, being in the centre of town, in some very expensive retail setups, like this one for Neo, which is a brand we don't have in Australia, but have made their presence known in Europe. So interesting company. They have this swappable battery technology, which is supposed to make your fast charging stops, like less than 5 minutes or something. So it'd be interesting to see if that technology takes off. Obviously, just the regular standard fast charging using a fixed battery is getting crazy fast now with these 800 volt, 900 volt cars. In fact, talking about 900 volts, while we were in Sweden, the Volvo had the global launch of their ES60.
Dude, you should pause there and refer to your notes. You meant to say EX60.
So it's a 800 volt technology. Lots of new tech there. They have a Chinese parent, so obviously they're using a lot of that tech to assemble these cars in Gothenburg in Sweden. They'll go on sale soon in some markets and be available to customers in the summer. So I did a walk around video when it was open to the public for a few days, and that video is linked up here somewhere. So if you want a walk around with no commentary, check that out. Other brands that we've seen are Zeekr, and they're pushing through advertising the launch of the 7 GT this year in Europe, which is, I guess, a sedan version of the 7X, which I think is also known as the 7 or 007 in some markets. So that is clearly being pushed here as well, with pre-orders out there, and it should be delivered to customers here in the summer. Other brands we've seen, Polestar, but in this case I saw some test cars on a car carrier. So this is when we were using the car ferry from Germany to Denmark. I saw 6 Polestar 5s with test drive, like QR codes on the side. Maybe some of the other models are being used for crash tests and the like. And then there's also a car in camouflage, which may be a Polestar 7, but we're not sure. What other brands have I seen? And BYD. It's, I think, in some markets here now, it's getting up there with Tesla. So I've seen examples of their showrooms and service centres pretty much everywhere. So the other thing you can't do when throwing a rock here is not hit a EV charger, they are everywhere. I think I've already said in plenty of other videos about Europe that they're pervasive, but even more so, in particular in Norway, they've solved the problem of apartment charging. We stayed in some accommodation in Bryn, just in Oslo, and the building basement was littered with AC chargers. In fact, we spoke to our host of our accommodation, and he said that they had been in their building for 10 years, to the point where they were obsolete and were being replaced with a new model. So yeah, everywhere you looked, you would find chargers, hotels, hotel basements, supermarkets, shopping centres, on-street parking. So that again has been solved in. Saw heaps of them in Stockholm and in Norway. With all of those EVs on the road, you're starting to see signs of petrol stations moving on with the times, either some closing down. There was one example I saw up in Kirkenes, up on the North Cape. Now, I don't know the exact reason why it closed, but if it didn't close for lack of petrol sales, there will be other petrol stations that will have and are going to, unless they evolve. And there are those that are evolving, like Circle K. There's some examples here in Oslo of them taking out petrol bowsers and replacing them with EV chargers. So that's good to see. So the one thing in these colder and snowy parts is you obviously need to be prepared for that and the hit that you'll take on your consumption. So with Keiru, we saw average consumption go from about 170 kilowatt hours per kilometre to over 200. And in fact, it caught me out. I was saying before, there's just chargers everywhere, so becoming a bit complacent. But we actually ended up being in turtle mode in our Keiru. For those of you that haven't experienced it, the car, when it gets very low, state of charge will slow down to the point where you feel like you're driving a turtle, and if you put your foot on the accelerator, the car will barely move. It's a bit disconcerting, but it's warning you that you need to charge. But anyway, I think I had got my consumption wrong because we were on a colder stretch, and so I had misjudged when we needed to charge next. So yeah, it's definitely something you need to be aware of in colder climates. The other thing you need to be aware of is, obviously being able to drive in very snowy and icy conditions. So we put alpine tyres on our car, which are mandatory in some countries. So they're either all-season or winter tyres. The other thing you need to do is you need to carry some form of brush or scraper to get rid of snow off your windows and off the car. Again, in some countries, it's there's laws against not being able to see clearly through your windscreen, which is, I think, true everywhere, really. Even if you've got a foggy windscreen, you shouldn't be driving. So there's stuff to cover that. So people are pretty much just getting on with it. I mean, the uptake is so high now in Norway, and that's one of the colder places that you have an EV. But people, they seem to get by. Most people would just be charging this every night. On the longer trips, though, you would definitely need to plan a bit. So tolls, congestion charges, most of them are number plate driven, so you can just go on a website and register your car. So I think in Norway and Sweden, for tourists, you could use the same account with a third party and just register your car's registration and drive around. So most freeways in those two countries, at least, you'd pay some sort of tolling. And in Stockholm, I saw examples of congestion charging. We've been driving on lots of ferries up here. There's plenty of water around. And interestingly enough, the ferries here don't seem to brand you as an EV. I remember when we caught the Spirit of Tasmania, we had to wear this brand of shame, this yellow EV sticker. But up here, I think they're so common that they don't do that anymore. On the incentives front, clearly that was one of the reasons why uptake in Norway was so high, is because they had incentives to buy EVs. I think they had dropped the tax on buying a car down to almost zero. That has now just recently changed. There's obviously no incentive now, I guess, to encourage people to switch over, because pretty much every new car being sold is EV. So I think they're now going to only offer incentives to cheaper EVs. I think higher priced EVs, there will be taxes on those. So Norway, 96%. Sweden's Denmark, I think, is in the 60s. Sweden is maybe in the 40s, and Finland in the 30s. So there are other incentives about to encourage people to take up EVs. All right, I think on that note, we'll call it quits on this one. See ya.